What is up, everyone? It's again time for our top 5 new brews. This is deck number 4, working our way up to number 1. And today's deck is Red White Auras or Boros Auras. And this deck looks incredibly powerful. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little bit worried that this is going to just be the dominating thing on the meta in the ladder. Because Mono Red is already really good, Boros is already really good. You got all these aggro decks all over the place, especially in best of one. And this seems even better. So yeah, let's take a look. All right, so basically the concept of the deck is very similar to the Auras decks in older formats like, Pioneer, Historic. I'm not sure if Legacy has a Auras deck, but I know that there's Timeless and Historic in Arena at least. So how it works is you need to have a lot of really good 1-drops that benefit from you casting your auras onto them. So for our 1-drops, we have Hearthfire Hero. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and sort this by mana value to make this a little bit easier for you guys. So we have Hearthfire Hero, already an all-star right now in Standard. And it's a 1-mana, 1/1 that grows bigger whenever you target it. It only happens once a turn, and then when it gets killed, it does damage to the opponent's face, basically. And we also have a new 1-drop from the set, Optimistic Scavenger. It's a 1-mana, 1/1. It costs 1 white. And whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Target creature. So it doesn't have to just be this. You can target another creature. So let's say you have a Hearthfire Hero down. You target your Scavenger with the aura. Then you put the counter on the hero. Because you targeted it, now it's going to grow even bigger. So it's still a way to pump up your team while diversifying your threats and preventing yourself from getting blown out by a removal. So yeah, it's another really good 1-drop. It's going to keep growing the more auras you cast, and it's going to get pretty big quickly. We also are playing an old favorite, Skrull Defector Might. This was played maybe about 2 sets ago, and before that was played a lot, and it was kind of the de facto 1-drop to protect your 2-drops and 3-drops. But and it even lets you get in past blockers. That's another big thing. People were playing Shieldred, and you needed to get past Shieldred sometimes, so you could use this to do that. But people stopped playing it, maybe because it's not aggressive enough. But I think with an auras type deck where you kind of like snowballing, and you're going to build up your creature, you don't want it to get removed. So having the protection is pretty important. So that's why we put Skrull in here as another one of our 1-drops. We're also playing Slumbering Keep card, an old card that is from the Eldraine set. But people tried it out. They didn't have a ton of success with it. There was a few aura decks back in Eldraine, but nothing really worked out super great. But now that we have a lot of really good new auras in Duskmourn, then it makes sense to bring him back. And I only have 2 of because early game he's not as good as the other 1-drops, but kind of mid game when you have a few auras down and you can activate this ability for 2 and a white, it will get a +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. So if you have a creature with a bunch of auras on it, you can pump this guy up also and swing in for 2, large damage. All right, so those are our 1-drop creatures. We have a lot because, again, in an aura type deck, you need to have really good early creatures that you can start putting auras onto. Other 1-drop auras that we have Ethereal Armor, of course. That's one of the main reasons to play aura right now. It's white and it's an enchantment aura. Whenever an enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control and has first strike. So hard to block because of the first strike, and it's going to get bigger and bigger for each enchantment. If you just have only the Ethereal Armor down, it's +1/+1 to first strike, but we're playing an auras deck, so it's going to get big very quickly. And of course, it's targeting for the Hearthfire Hero. It will pump up the Scavenger with the +1/+1 counters, and works great with all of our other stuff as well. And we're playing Monsterous Rage. We have 3 of. This one is kind of a standard staple, very strong in red, and it creates a monster roll enchantment token So it does count as an enchantment, as we learned back in Eldraine set. Um, very solid 1-drop card. The only downside to the Monsterous Rage is you can't really stack the roll tokens, so you don't want to have too many in your hand when you're doing an auras type deck where you're trying to go big, because they don't stack on top of each other. That was another problem we saw in the Eldraine set, was that the roll tokens can't stack, so you can't really kind of go tall. But it's still pretty good, so that's why we have 3. We're also playing Shards Rescue. This is kind of the protection spell of choice in the set, and in standard in general, because this is the cheapest one we've seen. It's white for flash enchantment aura. The creature gets hexproof until end of turn, and the creature also gets +1/+1. So gives us another aura enchantment, gives +1/+1, and you can cast it when they try to remove your creature to give it protection. So in total, we have 7 protection spells here. But you'll also kind of see that there's other ways to make your creatures surprisingly bigger, and then that can prevent some removal, especially against red, when somebody tries to use like lightning strike or something where it's like a, only a 3 damage or -3/-3. You can sometimes with the auras decks make your creatures bigger, and then that dodges the removal. All right, so in the 2-drop slot, Demonic Ruckus, it's not really a 2-drop because most of the time you're going to plot it for 1 mana. It's an aura. It gives +1/+1 menace and trample. Trample is very good in aura type decks. And then when it goes to the graveyard, you also draw. That's another problem that aura decks have, is they kill your big stacked up creature somehow, and then you're just out of gas. But if you have draw effects, it kind of mitigates it. And then we also have Feather of Flight. This is from Bloomburrow. There wasn't enough auras in Bloomburrow to, make an auras deck, but now that we have the new ones, it works out pretty well. It's flash, so you can flash it in kind of as a protection. It will, pump up your guys, and gives +1 and flying, and draws a card. So again, it's replacing itself, so that's very good. It gives flying, which is evasion, which is good for your really big, tall, stacked up aura creature. And if you have an ethereal armor in your creature, or Hearthfire Hero, or even the optimistic Scavenger, just casting this Feather of Flight will give you +1/+1 counters, or +1/+1 for each enchantment. So there's a good chance that you can use it to kind of also protect yourself, like I mentioned earlier. Lastly, this is another key piece we got. I think the deck could have worked without this, but this just makes it even better. 1 and a white enchantment aura. Exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until this leaves the battlefield. So it's target non-land permanent. So if they like temporary lockdown you, you can cast this on another creature and get all your stuff back. It also gives your enchanted creature +1 lifelink and ward 2. So it's going to be harder for them to remove this creature after you cast this. And then, the lifelink is pretty huge because, at least in Historic, one of the ways you can lose in the Auras deck is you can kind of get like burned out or something by a mono red burn. But you would typically have a few of your auras that gave you lifelink, so that when you're like 12 creature swings in, and you have lifelink, now you're gaining 12 life back. You can just really easily outpace the burn deck. So the fact that it gives life link and it has ward is super, super good, and just really makes your auras deck more resilient. Finally, in the top slot, we have Kellen the Fey Blooded. This is 2 and a red for a 2/2 with double strike, and for every other creature you control gets +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to Kellen. We don't have equipment, but for each aura attached to Kellen, your other creatures will get bigger. So, mid game to late game, you might cast this down and put an aura on Kellen, and it's going to also pump up your other creatures. And then probably the most important part is his sorcery adventure side. Search your library for an aura equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So you get to search for any aura. You're almost always going to search for ethereal armor, maybe sometimes for sheltered by ghosts, if you need a removal. I guess you might take the protection spell once in a while too, but most of the time you're going to search for your ethereal armor, you're going to stick it on a creature, and you're going to swing in for the lethal. So yeah, having the fact that you can tutor your aura that you need to win the game is pretty big. It kind of makes it so that you almost have 7 copies of ethereal armor in your deck, which just makes it all the more consistent. All right, so that's the basics. Besides that, we do have the new enchantment land. The new enchantment land, Valgavoth's Lair. I guess you can see it on the left side there. Valgavoth's Lair. It comes in tapped, which is a little bit sad. But a lot of times in aura decks, you don't want to play a naked creature on one without casting one of your auras or having up your protection spells. So I don't think it's that detrimental that you have a little bit of tap lands. We'll see. We'll see. But the fact that it's an enchantment means that, it can work well with your Slumbering Keep card. It works with your ethereal armor because it gets +1/+1 for each enchantment. So if you have 1 or 2 enchantment lands, it's gonna just make this even better right off the bat. I guess that's the main synergies with it. It does also trigger the Scavenger whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield. So it will trigger the Scavenger to give you +1/+1. So it's got some good synergies with the cards in the deck, and so that's why we've included it. I don't think it's necessary, but again, it can just help you a little bit with your Scavenger, Keep card, and ethereal armor. So it's worth trying, at least worth trying. All right, well, that's it for the deck. Again, I feel it's really, really powerful. We already know that the Hearthfire Hero, Monsterous Rage, aggressive mono red deck is very good. This one just seems like it's got stuff against the aggro decks. It's got stuff against the, removal deck, like Golgari mid-range or things like that try to blow up your creatures. So I think it's pretty resilient against the format, and I think it could be really good. So that's it for this one. Stay tuned for the next ones coming up. Until next time, have a blessed day, and see ya.